Morning, Donna.
Hi there, how are you?
I'm doing well. How are you?
Trying to stay warm. It's cold.
Yeah, it's I think it was like 16 or 17 this morning.
Well, on mine it said 13 and I'm going, oh, really?
Yeah, it's a very cold winter so far.
It has, and I think it's going to be the same way for the next week, I think.
Well,
Hi, Tom.
Good morning, Donna. How are you?
I'm great, thank you. We're going to wait and see how many people come in. I never know week to week how many people are going to show up. So
Yeah, let's see.
it's
Let's
all
see.
good.
Let's
It's
how
all
big this
good.
party gets.
all good.
It's cold out there today, isn't it?
It is. It is. Although when I lived in Chicago, if you
Oh,
had
you live in
13
Chicago? Oh,
degrees,
yeah, this isn't cold to you.
yeah, I lived 5 years in Chicago,
No
and
kidding.
13 degrees like this would be like minus 30 because the wind would be blowing so
Oh
hard.
no, that wind chills.
So,
and all
yeah.
that. The windy city, right?
Never want to say it's super cold. We don't really get all that cold.
No, Colorado's not that cold compared to the Chicago and Green,
Well,
Green Bay and Michigan, those kind of places.
yeah, I lived in Michigan. I lived in Detroit for years and years. And then we moved to Chicago and I thought, now I know why they call it the Windy City
Yeah, it's
because
cold.
it was
cold
incredibly
in
windy
Chicago,
all
yeah.
the time. It
Mhm.
never stopped blowing. And I lived in Oklahoma and I'm comparing that to Oklahoma, but at least when it did stop in Oklahoma, you got a tornado, but it never stopped in Chicago. And it's
Yeah.
always blowing.
Detroit. Did you live in Detroit, or did you live out outskirts of Detroit?
Oh, where in the outskirts of Detroit?
Oh no, I was asking you, where did you live?
Oh, I lived in hang on just a minute. I was born in Highland Park, Michigan. And yeah, my daughter was born in Livonia, in Troy. No, Rochester. We lived in Troy. She was born in Rochester. My niece is still living there in I think she lives near Grand Rapids. I can't remember the exact place.
geez, up there, huh?
Yeah, but I still have a first cousin that lives in Livonia. And I probably have other cousins that I don't know about that are still living there too. However, the key word is Detroit is from Detroit. Because it's it's a sad place to live most of the time.
Yeah, in Detroit, I have some family in Sterling Heights. So
Oh,
we used to
yeah.
go up there.
That was my first apartment was Sterling Heights. My husband worked in the store in Sears at Troy. And we lived in.
They're trying to revamp Detroit. I mean, I think the guy who owns Rocket is really trying to put money there, but I don't know if that's gonna work.
Well, good luck with them.
Project.
Yeah,
Big.
well, the thing about it is that you have blocks and blocks. I'm sure the house that my in-laws lived in probably isn't standing anymore. My grandmother lived off of Gratiot and Woodward, I believe, and that whole area is gone. I mean, every house is gone. Why, I don't know, but my sister called and told me that her house was no longer there anymore. So, well, I think we'll wait one little bit second here, and then we're going to start on listings. So if you guys have any questions, Melissa and Solomon, if you have any questions, just jump right in, okay?
Okay, thank you.
You're
Great,
welcome.
thank you.
Hang on, let me see if I can share here. Oop, wrong one. Hang on. Stop sharing. I was on the wrong screen. All right, let me shrink you guys here. Let me get my, okay. So now. Okay. Can everybody see that?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. Great, great, great. All right, this is the outline. This is the checklist for your under contract. And I ask you to do a little more than other offices because I think it's important to help you understand how to keep yourself out of trouble. I asked for an O&E, which is an owner and encumbrance from the title company. It's $5. And this way you can check who, let's see, let's say Jane Doe calls and says, hey, I want to list my house. I got your referral from blah, blah, blah. And you look it up, and Jane Doe is not on title on the house. And I will tell you, it happens more times than you think. But then you have the legal description, any encumbrances, anything that's been filed against the house other than the first deed of trust. It all shows up. It's $5. If you come across a situation where you see that somebody has filed an NED, notice of election and demand, that means that house has only got a little short fuse to get it sold. So these things will crop up as we go into 2023. You have to do a seller's net sheet, but you can get the program you can get from the title company, or ask the title company to do one for you. Every time you have a price reduction or you receive an offer, you should do a net sheet. This way the seller can make a good decision on what their bottom line is. Then you look up your public records. That tells you who's on title, and you can verify that with your O&E. You have your listing agreement, definitions of working relationship. You have your seller advisory, which is the advisory from our in-house attorney. You have a seller's property disclosure. You have a square foot disclosure. You have a common interest community checklist if there's an HOA. This is a document that says, hey, this is what we have to the best to the knowledge of the seller. And it's just an extra document we give to the buyers to help. That way you don't get as many questions from the listing agent or the buyers. You answered a lot of questions between that and the seller's property disclosure. Any and all amend extends. If it's a short sale or you need a seller's authorization, you need to call me if you're going to have a house that has a short sale, because there are some other steps that you need to take. Then if it's a lead-based paint house, you have to have the lead-based paint disclosure and a lead-based paint obligation to seller if the house was built before January 1st, 1978. So we want to be sure that you've got all those documents in order. If it's not, it was built after 78, don't worry about it. You have an MLS printout sheet. Once your property goes into the MLS, you upload your MLS into the listing portion in Command. Then you have a source of water. I require that, even though I know it's in the seller's property disclosure, but the highest suit in an E&O situation is about water. Now, we're lucky in this state that we have a source of water addendum, which says, hey, here's where our water comes from. So we don't have as many of these suits, but if you just leave it to chance that they're either going to look, most sellers or most buyers rarely look. They look at the seller's property disclosure, but they don't really read where the water comes from. In some areas of the country, it's more important than it is here. We have closing instructions. Dora says, if you have a document, if we have a document, you need to use it. Closing instructions are it. You do not sign closing instructions at the table from the title company. Please do not do that. You want to make sure you have a fully executed closing instructions so that you won't have to do that at closing. Once in a while you have to, just because of circumstances, but it's better not to. When you go under contract, now you've got your under contract MLS printout sheet, you've got the contract, a counter maybe, receipt for the earnest money, inspection objection resolution, if lead-based paint disclosure, if it applies, seller's property disclosure, square foot, source of water, closing instructions, any and all amends, and it might have a post-closing occupancy and a lender letter. Then you go, once you upload all that, you go to commission request and fill that out. And then when you close, these are the documents you have. You've got to, they'll ask them to send it to you in an email form. You can upload the documents into the sold portion of Command and the sold MLS and a copy of your checks or the distribution sheet. It's real important. Those are the three things that are required. Any questions so far? Okay,
Usually
here's
in
our,
Colorado, where is the
pardon me?
source of water? For the source of water addendum,
Yes.
in Colorado, you said is usually, where does it come from? Does it come from like the rivers and reservoirs and stuff, or?
Well, people who come from Texas, it's a huge water issue. I mean, we have a huge water issue. So if you buy a
Yeah.
house, you'd like to know, am I going to pay $400 for, every 2 months for water when I water my lawn in the summertime, which you very well may be up to $500 every other month because water is very expensive and they're charging more and more for it. Okay. So people want to know where the water is. If you also have on that sheet, if you need if it's a well or whatever the case may be. So it's real informative. So you just want to be sure that you make sure that you have it when you list a property, you have where that source of water comes from. Sometimes it could be from Denver, it could be from Aurora, it could, like in Highlands Ranch, we're a community water source. And so ours comes from a aquifer that's closer to the foothills. So they come from all areas, okay? But you also understand we were in huge water restrictions, more so than we normally are this year, and it's going to get worse next year. So
Yeah.
it's a real important piece of paper for a buyer to understand what it is.
And then where do we find that?
It's in CTME or
CTM.
yeah,
Okay.
DocuSign or CTME. It's one of the,
Okay.
yeah, it's
Okay.
one of the approved forms from DORA. Does that help?
Yeah, I was just
Okay.
curious.
That's okay. All right, then you always check 2.1 in your listing agreement because we're a multi-person office. You will have the seller's legal name. Keller Williams LLC, Keller Williams Real Estate LLC should already be there in your name because as you fill out your information for CTME or DocuSign, then it should be automatically populated. 3.4, you put the county you're in, the legal description, and the address of the property. Then we go down to 3.7, and this is your listing agreement. You have a beginning and ending period. You always have a beginning and ending period. You don't change any of that. I would suggest strongly that it's a 6 to 9 month listing period right now. Sellers are not going to be happy with that discovery because we're not selling them in 24 hours. At all. So we really have to be sure that we know that we're going to have enough time to sell it. Interest rates go up and down. I mean, it's a daily movement. So you have to be sure you put enough time in there. Okay, so on 3.9.2, I would always check will, but you can check will not. It's where you're going to move your date to the next date. It doesn't fall on a Saturday, Sunday, or holiday. And we go down to 4.3.1.2. You check this box. You're only a seller's agent. You do not represent anybody else. If somebody wants to come to buy your listing, you can do one of two things. You can say, I can treat you as a customer. I give you you have to ask your own questions. And my loyalty is to my seller. Or I can refer you to an agent in the office and that person can help you. And then you call whoever you want and get a 25% referral fee for referring that name and getting this under contract. Now we have brokerage duties. Everybody has duties. You don't have to memorize them, but you want to kind of become familiar with them. Then when we get down to the bottom, it says, broker will or will not disclose to prospective buyers or there's another offer on the table. So please do not lie to another agent. If you've got an offer, tell them. If you don't, tell them. But don't be playing games of saying, hey, listen, I got an offer and you really don't have an offer. And if that agent says, can you prove it to me? Now you're stuck because you don't have it. So be always honest with your dealings here. So check the box. Hey, I'll tell you if I've got another offer on the table. When you check the box at the top, seller's agent, up here, right here, you pick up 3 additional duties. You are now a these 3 additional duties. If you're going to get fired, here's where you're going to get fired. You're promoting the interest of the seller. You're seeking price and terms that are set forth in the listing contract and consulting with them, the good and bad of this offer that may or may that has come in. So if you're going to get fired, these are the 3 you're going to get fired on. So always make sure you tell them when you're going to check in with them, what you're doing. Make sure you keep them posted as often as you can. Okay. So now what are you going to charge? This is the total percentage. In January of 2023, our listing agreements are going to change. They will no longer have this box down here for buyer agent or transaction broker. They'll have one box that says you're paying the co-oping broker X percentage, whatever that may be. And then on 7.1.2, I always put a commission for lease and be paid time at the lease. Now, the reason I do that is the fact that now I have a seller who may want to take their house off the market and rent it. I'd like to get paid for something that I've done. So you want to be sure you can get at least some fee if it's going to be leased. I've never exercised it, but it's something to be aware of. Okay. Now 7.2.3 is the holdover period. So you can put anywhere from 30 to 120 days in here, and you will be owed a commission, and you have to be sure you supply them with property people that have gone through the property with you, not another agent, but with you. So then on 8.9 is self-explanatory here. Now we get down to the MLS. 9.1.1, it will go into the MLS. Seller uses electronic marketing system, which we accept none. Most of the time that's a none. You don't put any NEs in your contract either. At the bottom of your CTME contract, there's at the very bottom, right below right at the very bottom, there's something where it says you click on it, remove NAs, do so. Makes a much cleaner document. 9.1.4, it will be displayed in the internet, and the property listing will be in the internet. So both of these boxes are checked. How are you going to get into the property if you're another agent? By electronic box or manual? I would highly encourage all of you to get an electronic lockbox. You can get them from Smedra. Most of you belong to Smedra. And you want to get that because it gives you recording and easy setup, and it's a great way. We use Broker Bay here in the office, and once you set it up and go through it, it's real easy to do. But I encourage you to do electronic lockboxes. Now you can say other instructions: must call the seller, must text the seller. In my case, I have a listing of a friend of mine. So I text her or call her. I get notifications first for several reasons why. But sometimes the seller will get the notification versus you. So it will come to them either text or call. Normally it's going to be text. Then on 9.2.2, you only want licensed people in your house. And I forgot to check licensed appraiser here. Unlicensed assistant, unlicensed inspector. Our inspectors are not licensed, our home inspectors. They're not licensed. So you always want to make sure the selling agent is going to be a licensed agent, he or she, or the assistant that is licensed has to be there when an inspection occurs. Or you will, but you don't want anybody that's not licensed going into your property. Then we go down to marketing. I would encourage you to put this down on 9.3.1. All professional marketing services offered by the brokerage firm as broker deems necessary. This is a statement so that you don't get locked in to saying, I'm going to do 100 things to your property to advertise it, and you only have a condo that's 900 square feet. You do different things for a 900 square foot house than you do for a 4 or 5,000 or 3,000 square foot home. You have different situations that you do, and some you do the same, some you add additional things, like could be a drone picture, could be a number of things that you do differently. Then your videos, 9.3.2. When the house is videoed, is there any part of your house, Mr. Seller, that we can't video? Please ask that question. If you have a pool and it's summertime and people are in the pool, but there's a pool next door and they catch people, if that drone or those pictures are taken with people next door, that's invasion of privacy. So you have to be careful, make sure that everybody knows where they can, or some people don't like their children's rooms videoed. So always ask the question. Most of the time, it's not going to be a problem, but every once in a while it will. So
Donna, I
yeah.
have a question. This is Vicky.
Sure.
Did you say on 9.2.2 to check unlicensed inspectors?
No, don't check that. Just check active licensed real estate broker and licensed appraiser. Those are the only two you check.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, so now we go down here. If somebody takes their house off the market, we can't control all of the marketing that goes out. Some of it we can't retrieve or can't cancel. So number 10, we talk about negotiations, advertising, and then no existing agreement. So currently you don't have another agreement with an agent. Some people might call you, say, I hate my agent that I currently have, and I want you to list my property, which is great. However, you have to have proof, one, that the listing agreement has been withdrawn and the marketing. So it's the listing and the marketing that has to be withdrawn before you can put that house on the market again. So check it doesn't have, they have not submitted any prospects to you. So 10, 4, and 5 basically are self-explanatory for you. Then we go down to pricing. If it's a low enough price, it'll be cash, conventional, FHA, VA all along the way. So you have to understand what the ceiling on FHA and VA are, and if the condo place that you've listed is FHA and VA approved. Each townhome area has, or condo has to resubmit their HOA their FHA document approval. And it's I think every 3 years, 2 or 3 years, depending on the complex. I think mine is 3 years. So you got to make sure it's still that you can offer it, because otherwise, if it isn't offered, you can't sell it FHA and VA. Are there any discount points? None at this time. It could be that you will offer some, but you want to make that decision, Mr. Seller, when an offer comes in. Buyer closing cost. If you have an FHA and VA buyer, they can't exceed a certain amount of dollars. I always put $350. It goes $50 to about $500, but I always put $350 because it can't exceed that. Seller should decide at the time of offer if any seller concessions are going to be given. Put that statement in there so that you're not boxing your seller into anything that he or she does not want to do. Then we have our earnest money, and basically anywhere from 3,000 to 5,000 on a 300 to say about 500 is a pretty good number. Anything past that should be a little higher. Not much, but then you go into a different court system. How does the seller want the proceeds? Cashier's check, transfer, and they can always change their mind on that. It's not a problem. FERPA, you want to ask the question, Mr. Seller, do you hold a U.S. citizenship? If the answer is yes, great, you just go through this paragraph. However, if they say no, then you have to ask them and tell them that they're going to be responsible excuse me, for some taxes that have to be paid at closing, and the title company will give them the documentation for that. If it is not collected at closing, the buyer is going to be responsible for it. So we want to make sure we have the right people are going to pay the correct taxes. Colorado withholding is a 2%. If they're snowbirds and they're selling their house here and staying in Arizona, there could be a 2% additional fee at closing for the state of Colorado. But these are things that the title company will ask and take care of. But as long as your seller is a US citizen, and then that 11.7 won't apply. If they're saying, yes, I'm in the country with a green card or a work permit, or it's a number of other things, there are taxes that are due on that sale of the property. 12 talks about the deposit. It'll either, in our case, it goes into a title company's escrow, and we don't keep escrow anymore. 13 is what's included in the property. So now we've got 3 remotes, 2 remotes, 1 remote. Is there any lease? Is there anything that needs to be checkboxed in a lease? Solar is usually our number one. The next one is usually security system. And then what's going to be inclusions, but not attached. This is personal property, none that's got encumbrance. So all the personal property that's going to remain is not got a loan on it or anything, like a new stainless steel refrigerator. 13.1.4 is where you put other inclusions. So it be specific. Kitchen refrigerator, GE refrigerator, freestanding GE or LG or whatever it is. Be specific of 1, what it is, and 2, where it's located. The more you do that, more you put into MLS, the less problems you have when you get an offer. Is anything leased? No. Okay, that's great. What's excluded? Washer and dryer located in the laundry room on the main floor. So again, if you have a large house listed, the washer and dryer, you might have 2. So you want to be sure which one is staying and which one is going. Now we get to the trade fixtures. Most of the time, you're not going to have any trade fixtures. So you can put the word none at the end. Don't put NAs. And then you have what your parking spaces are, 13.4. Yes, I know that house has a 3-car garage that's attached, and that there could be some storage, some storage that's going to convey with the property. The reason I have you fill this out is when you're doing a house, and you know there's a shed in the backyard, it's real easy to do that. But when you do a condo or a townhome, you have to ask the question, Mr. Seller, where's your parking? Do you have it? Is it underneath? What's the number? Do you have any storage closets or facilities? Those are where you forget to ask the questions, and that's where you guys get into trouble when you go to sell property like that. So we want to be sure we put it in here to ask the right questions. Most of the time, you're going to have no deeded water and no other water and no well rights or certificate or growing crops. So these are all nones. If you happen to have them, I need you to call me because there's some other things we need to do. So 14 is telling you what's the encumbrance against the property. 14.3 is you're going to convey a special warranty deed, never a general. All of the general warranty deeds, warrants have been taken away. They have very few. So now you're wanting a special warranty deed, and it's what you're going to convey. That means the seller is warranted from the time they own it till the time they sell it. It is not as it was in a general warranty deed for infinity before they owned it. They're responsible for everything. They don't have that anymore, and it's changed about 5 or 6 years ago. So you check the box special warranty deed. Once in a while, you will have a personal representative deed, but it's unusual. You'll rarely have a bargain and sale that's normally limited to water and stuff. Quit claim is something else. So now on 14.4 is what liens are against the house. So I've got a first in the amount of approximately $2,000, $200,000 in Wells Fargo. This comes off your document that you run from Realist. It'll tell you at the bottom if there's a loan against it. And if they know the balance, fine. If they don't, put down whatever it shows. It's an approximate amount so you can figure out your seller's proceeds sheet. I don't have any leases against this property. So now we go to HOA. Mr. Seller, what is your HOA? It's blank amount. Blah, blah, blah. Is there a special assessment? In my case, we're in the middle of collecting a special assessment for about $5,300 plus because of a hail damage that occurred in 2021. Long story, was a big mess. So we finally got it organized. When are they going to take possession, the buyers? Well, we don't know because we don't have an offer. So put down upon mutual agreement. This way, whatever comes in, the buyer and the seller can say, sure, that works for me, and everybody moves forward. We don't want to commit them to something unless we know what it is. So now these are your, you have to material facts. We are going to put out a seller's property disclosure. I would highly encourage anybody, including a flip, to do a seller's property disclosure. The reason I tell you to do that is the fact that, excuse me, the seller that did the flip really does know what it is. So they really do need to fill this out. And there's this, we're going from a 6-page seller's property disclosure to a 12-page property disclosure on January 1st. So it's going to be much more intense. And I would encourage every seller to take their time and go through it. I would also encourage you to do it at the time of listing. And then just when you get an offer, you want to verify with your seller that nothing has changed. So everything is still the way it was when you listed it, okay? So now you have lead-based paint. We've already talked about that. Every house before you list must have carbon monoxide detectors within 15 feet of the sleeping areas. And the reason that is state law, it's been in effect for about 7 or 8 years. And I would highly encourage you, because if you have an FHA loan on this property and there's no carbon monoxide detectors, then they're going to walk out the door. And there'll be another $150 tagged on to that for them to come back and to do the appraisal. So you really need to have carbon monoxide detectors when the house is listed. Okay, and the condition of the property is it's going to convey exactly on the day that you get it. No, it's not going to be, you can't be whining and sniffling if you're going to do a rent back about something. It's ordinary wear and tear here. Buyers, I mean, parties have a right to cancel, sellers have a right, and brokers have a right. So you want to read through that. Most of the time, you have to understand the brokerage firm is the listing agent of the properties. If you have an unhappy seller, I'm going to tell you, just let them go. But if you have something and you don't want to let them go, then you need to consult with me, because I'm the decision maker. Then if you have a deal that goes south and it doesn't close and you get the earnest money back, I always give 100% back to the seller, because they're the ones that encourage the damage, although you can divide it between the office and the seller. Then on 21, 22, and 23, 4, 5, 6, and 27 are all pretty self-explanatory. Now, in additional provisions, this is where I put and notify the seller. I have a transaction coordinator. I encourage all of you to interview. I've got names. Melissa has names. I mean, Amy has names. But get somebody to do your transaction coordinator. You're selling houses. You're not doing paperwork. And I put that information in here and who's going to pay for that. And then what is attached to this contract? Seller's property disclosure, square foot, seller advisory, common interest community checklist for brokerage firm, closing instructions, seller's proceed sheet, lead-based paint, and cells if it applies. If it doesn't, then don't put that in there. The one thing I left out is definitions of working relationship. So you have your listing agreement, and now we're 30 all the way down to 35 is really self-explanatory. The seller signs it. Your signature should already be on there. And now you have definitions of working relationship or brokerage relationship, which usually has to do with the for sale by owner. This one you get signed, and that's the second part of the first email. Third part is the seller's advisory. This is the document in which Damien, our in-house attorney, has prepared for us to give to a seller to notify them that different things occur when you get an offer. Please remove your valuables. Please understand the dispute for earnest money. Please understand if you do a post-closing occupancy, what that entails. Solar panels, wire fraud, MLS rules, home warranties, financing, tax consequences, any of those things. And the sellers are to sign. So now you have the first email that goes to a seller. After you've talked to them about what you want, you go and you send the following 3 things in an email. First email to a seller. You do the listing agreement, you do the definitions of working relationship, and you do seller's seller's advisory. That's the first email. You want to go through that with them and point and say, hey, this is where you sign it. I don't care if you do a Zoom meeting or you do it in person, whatever you want to do. But make sure they understand what they're signing. So that's your first email. Along with your first email, I would encourage you to say your seller's your seller's proceed sheet. Let me get to that. No, it's kind of like out of the sequence here for us. Let me get to it. Where is it? Okay. So this is the seller's estimated net sheet. So this says to the seller, hey, we're listing your house at X, your loan is Y, and you're going to net A. So I would send it along with your first email, because in CTME, we ask you to sign that. We ask them to sign it. But I think in DocuSign, or if the title company hasn't got a signature page, you don't have to. But you want to be sure that that's in an email that they know they've got it, because you don't want anybody coming back at you and say, well, I didn't know I wasn't going to net my 110,000. I only net 104, 108, or whatever the number is. But if you have them sign it, then they don't have any more, you don't have a discussion about anything. And it helps you when you need a price reduction of any kind. So there are 4 things you can send in your first email. You can send your listing agreement, definitions of working relationship, seller advisory, and the seller's net sheet. Now you could send your seller's net sheet in a second email if you want. So now we're going to go back to what goes in your third email. So now that you've got the seller to sign all your listing agreement, your listing agreement has been signed. And now we have, disclosures that need to be attached in your second or third email. So now the first one is your seller's property disclosure. As I said, in January, this property disclosure is going from 6 pages to 12 pages. So you're going to have to, you cannot fill it out for them, but they're more than happy for you. To guide them in the sense of, if they have a question, you'll be happy to answer it. So as they fill it out, they have a question. If you're there, then help them with the filling out. It's going to be much more intense, a little easier to read, and some other things that are going to go into this now. So make sure you fill it all out, and then they actually sign it at the bottom here. And then when you get a buyer, you'll have a buyer signature here. That's the first disclosure in your second or third email. Okay, next one is your square footage email. This comes off of Realist, where you've got this comes from the assessor's office, and what your square foot is on the main floor and the upper floor, and what your basement is. It finished or unfinished? Okay, so that's your second one. Now your third one is going to be source of water. As we talked, if you have acreage, you could have a well. There'll be a well permit. Here is, if it's just your normal, who's the provider of your water, ask the seller who it is so you can fill it out. And if it's a piece of land and it has no source of water, you can check the last box. This is something important that you want to do. Then your third thing is your closing instructions. You fill this out accordingly. It's not that difficult. When you get down to number 5, you want to call, there's a fee to close the real estate side and the loan side. You want to ask your title company. It goes anywhere from $300 to $500. So find out what it is and make sure you put it in there appropriately. And then that would also be included in your email, this closing instructions, and the seller and the buyer sign it, and the closing company. whoever's going to close it. Then you have lead-based paint obligation to seller, if that's going to be included. Then you have them sign it. This is your obligation. On lead-based paint sales, the first portion is either they do or don't have knowledge. And the second part is the buyer is or is not going to do an inspection. All parties have to sign, buyers, sellers, listing agent, and selling agent. If you do not, it is a $18,000 fine, and it goes up with the cost of living every year thereafter. So it's very expensive. So here's your seller's estimated sheet. That could come in the second or third email. So now you have 4 things that you have to send them when you do your disclosures. You have seller's property disclosure, you have square foot disclosure, you have source of water, and you have closing instructions, and you could have 2 more based on if it's a lead-based paint house or not. Any questions so far?
Yes.
Okay.
So my question is, so sorry. You know how you mentioned, obviously we have to be meticulous at the contracts, making sure we ask all the questions so we get everything in the contract as much detail as possible. But the contract is also signed by the seller. What, I guess I'm because since they're signing the contract, what liability lies on them? Anything?
Well,
You know,
unless they disclose incorrectly or hide an adverse material fact, there
Okay.
is no liability for them.
Okay, so basically it is on us, like, even though they've signed it and it's not included, let's say we didn't include it and they did sign it, even though they've supposedly read it and signed it, there's nothing that,
Well,
There-
yeah, and the thing is, it's our responsibility when we get an offer to compare it to the listing agreement to make sure we've got either things included or excluded, okay?
yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
I just was curious. Thank you.
Yeah, no problem. And we do have another document that would be in the disclosures, common interest community checklist. It's in your CTME. And this is filled out if there's an HOA, only if there's an HOA. If there's no HOA, you don't have to fill it out. But this is filled out by the seller and stating, do you have more than one HOA? In my case, I live in a townhome. I have 2 HOAs. I have the Highlands Ranch master one, and I have the association that collects monthly fees for me. And the Brownstones are one, Highlands Ranch is the master. So we put all this information, what does it include, to the best of the seller's knowledge. So you have that as goes along with your second or third email. Now, if this is kind of termination, which got thrown in here by mistake, but a lot of times most of your terminations are going to be inspections. And that'll be usually when somebody terminates. And then we have the earnest money release if there's a termination, determining normally it's the buyer who's going to terminate. Other than that, that's it. Who's got a question? Anybody got a question?
I was, Donna, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Is there a way we could download that PDF of your contract you just screen through us?
Yep.
Where do
Go
we find that?
when you're in your KW email, your Gmail account. There are 6 buttons on the top over here on the right-hand side. Okay. And then you click the button. When it opens up, go to My Drive. And in the box, type in resources Park Meadows. And it'll pop up, and then go to your right and it says contracts, pop that up. Everything we talk about every Monday is there.
Okay.
Are you doing it, Thomas? I see your eyes moving.
Oh, yeah, I'm
Okay.
going through them.
No, well, go ahead and tell me that you got there. And you can print those. It's the easiest way if you just have print copies with you when you're writing an offer. And I would strongly suggest that you put a listing agreement together. You don't have to do disclosures or anything. You need to know where it is. But go ahead and fill out a listing agreement. It's your own house, a friend's house, whatever you want. I don't care.
Got it.
Did you find him, Thomas?
I'm writing up contracts right now and I did find it.
Okay, good.
So through our KW email, everything's on the drive there then.
And most of the class, I won't say all the classes, but a lot of the classes that you might have materials for may be there. I'm not going to tell you all of them are, but all of my contract classes are there. And you can also ask Amy, but I know that many times these are recorded too.
Donna, would you go over the instructions there on how to get to the resources? please?
Sure. Okay, you have a KW Gmail account.
Yes.
All right, go to your upper right-hand corner, you see 6 dots. Not super up, but it's kind of like follow across and you'll see 6 dots there. You
6
see
or
that?
9.
Vicki?
Okay, let me see here. I do. There
Okay, click on that, just click on that.
are,
And one of the boxes that pop up is going to be My Drive.
there's a drive.
Okay, then click that.
Okay. Drive.
Mine has My Drive on it, so.
Okay.
And then in the box above, type in Resources Park Meadows, the area that you can type in. Once it opens up, you'll see a blank box up there and you can type in Resources Park Meadows.
You're really breaking up on me. So I have to type that someplace.
Yeah, at the very top, there's a
Okay.
box of like a blank box, and type in Resources Park Meadows.
Like search and drive. Okay.
Yeah.
And my resources.
No. Resources Park Meadows.
All in one word.
No, resources is one word, Park Meadows is one word, and park is one word and Meadows is one word.
Yeah. Okay. Resources. Okay.
When it pops up, you'll look to your right and there should be it should say something about, there should be a label contracts.
Okay, and go to the right and there should be what?
Contracts. Just, it'll say contracts in the little icon thing, little square box.
Okay, there's a file that says resources.
Click on that then.
Okay.
I'm not sure what you're doing, Vicki, but we'll try to get you there.
Yeah. Okay, so click on resources, but it's not wanting to click. Maybe there's red line contracts.
No.
No, the weekly lead. Okay. I think somehow resources, a file that says resources does not open.
Okay, I think somehow you're not in the right spot. Are you coming into the office anytime within the next few days?
I'll try to be at the meeting. if
Oh,
I-
the sales meeting on Wednesday?
Yes.
Okay. When you come in, come find me and I'll show you where to go, okay?
Okay, all right. I think I'm close. I'll just kind of,
Play around with it for a minute or two.
maybe it has to load or something. All right.
Okay. Did everybody else find it? Or is everybody else good?
Mhm.
Okay.
Yes, I'm good, Donna. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. We will not have a class next week because it's Thanksgiving week, but the following week we will, and we'll be doing buy-sell contracts that day.
Okay,
In the
thank you so
meantime,
much.
You're welcome.
Okay, thank you.
In the meantime, have a great Thanksgiving. If I don't see you on Wednesday at team meeting.
Thank you.
you too.
Okay,
You're welcome. Bye.
bye.
Have a nice Thanksgiving.
You too.
Yes,
Bye.
you too.